Okay. Keeping up appearances. Now, Dr. Lee,
Yes.
for your PhD, you
Yes.
explored a lot about the class structure
Yes, I did.
of Great Britain,
I did.
etc. So I'm going to kind of bow to your superior knowledge on this one. So how does keeping up appearances relate to the class system?
Well, there's a lot to unpick in this episode, so buckle up. This might take a while, it won't take that long actually, because the show is built almost entirely on class anxiety, specifically Hyacinth trying to appear upper class. You know, at the beginning of the episode, she describes herself as, I'm a highly desirable private residence in an area of outstanding natural property values. So we have Hyacinth, who is ostensibly middle class, but as is revealed, she comes from a working class background. So we see her relatives, and they're portrayed as kind of lazy, unrefined, they're a bit vulgar. So Sister Rose has been dumped. There's that great scene where they're in Onslow and Daisy's bedroom. They've got this ashtray full of fag butts next to the bed. They're in the sitting room with the telly's on really loud. And in the series, the humour relies on exaggerating these class traits, I suppose. And if we watch it today, it feels like it's reinforcing those class kind of structures as opposed to mocking them gently. We're mocking Hyacinth for sure, but at the same time, we're still showing the working class characters as kind of feckless and lazy. So we've already said at the beginning of the show, 1991 is a kind of inflection point with regards class, because John Major has a desire to turn Britain into a classless society, which suggests that Britain is still very much a class-ridden society. And he has been unusual in that he's a working class boy made good, and that's what he wants everybody else to have as well. Unfortunately, the establishment works against him on that. And class is still a powerful and visible part of everyday life. Where you lived, what accent you had, did you say class or class, the jobs you did, the music you listened to, the TV you consumed, all showed what kind of class you belonged to. Traditional class structure is still very much intact. Well, you know, and even though the labels are loosening, people are still very much aware of class. But like John Major, people are starting to be able to talk about class in a way that was unthinkable years before, where it was considered vulgar to talk about class. So think about accent. Do you know what RP is?
Yes. Received pronunciation.
Exactly. So RP is received pronunciation, which at the turn of the 20th century becomes the desirable way to speak. So it's very kind of clipped. You don't move your mouth. It's the kind of upper classes way of talking.
Very brief encounter.
Very brief encounter, exactly. National and regional accents are unacceptable in any kind of broadcasting and any kind of conversation. And I remember as a kid, I don't know if it was the same for you, but if you saw someone on TV with the northeastern accent, there'd be a sense of shame. It'd be like, oh my God, they're showing us up. You know, can you not talk proper? I'm sure your mum had a phone voice. My mother had a phone voice, you know. So, however, by the 1930s, what's called the Queen's English, received pronunciation, gives way to BBC English, which becomes the ideal way to speak. Rejection of this starts in the 60s, and in the 60s is when the first time you get a dialogue between the classes.
Coronation Street
Absolutely.
comes on air.
Absolutely. We get films like Alfie, where we have working class heroes. So in the 60s, you start to get working class voices on screen in a way that you haven't had. But Coronation Street's a really good example.
What's the sketch where there's three men and is it John Cleese?
John Cleese, Ronnie. Is it Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett? I
think it might be.
It's from one of the. I can't remember what show it's from, but it's from like one of the satirical sketch shows of the 60s.
That was or something like
something
that.
like that.
With research department.
I think it's called The Full Report or something like
Okay.
that. But the 1980s has shaped class dynamics in new ways. So we've talked before about the decline of heavy industries and how working class communities have been hollowed out. But at the same time, we've got the rise of home ownership, and the 80s is about aspiration, that suddenly you can start to have nice things that the class above you has in their houses. So some working class people are able to move into the middle classes, like Hyacinth does in Keeping Up Appearances. Now, here's an interesting thing. In a Gallup poll, there were two Gallup polls in 1961 and 1996. The question was asked, was there a class struggle in the UK? In 1961, 60% of people thought there was a class struggle in the UK. In 1996, that figure's risen to 80%. So all the stuff that's happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s has shown people that there's still this real disparity between the classes. It's still very much tied to our geography. If you're from the north, from Wales, Scotland, chances are you're going to be considered lower class. If you're from the southeast, especially London, you're going to be considered middle class. So there's a real north-south divide. But more people are moving between classes, but the barriers remain strong. Networks, old boys networks, education, what school you went to, cultural expectations. You can move up, but it wasn't easy, and your class identity often sticks with you forever. So,
and there were all sorts of institutions like the Freemasons, like the Rotary clubs, all that kind of thing.
Eton, Windsor, those schools, they still perpetuate this system. So back to John Major, who said he wants a classless society because it's clearly an issue. And this sitcom trades on this idea of class, but it's pretty much possible. You can move up, but it's very easy to move down, but it's very difficult to move up.
And I suppose just linking it back to keeping up appearances. Now, there was an unseen sister called Sister Violet, who Hyacinth always said, she's got this like really big house, a room for a pony and all that kind of thing. So there was an aspiration there from Hyacinth to better herself because her sister had elevated herself as well. So it felt like Hyacinth was kind of stuck in the middle, even though she said she lived in the highly desirable area. It's suburbia, it's a suburban street. She lives in a bungalow. It's not that great. But it felt like the interior of her home was her palace. That's where she could manage her class with the Royal Dalton with the hand-painted periwinkles and all that kind of thing. So that was kind of her castle, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So watching this, it was really interesting to see actually to position this within this whole the changing. And when we talk about Coronation Street, but EastEnders has had a big influence. From the mid-80s, the idea that you can only present on TV if you talk proper is starting to diminish. And keeping up appearances. What's interesting about keeping up appearances is that if you think about the class comedies of the 70s, there's almost a political message within them. Even something as innocuous as The Good Life has got a quietly subversive political message behind it, whereas keeping up appearances doesn't. It's just, this is the class system. And actually taking the piss a bit out of the working class characters. But
also I think Hyacinth was the butt of the joke a lot of the time, and her aspirations and her delusions, I suppose. But you're talking about, the political messages. I'm thinking of Citizen Smith.
Exactly.
Robert Lindsay.
Really good example. So that was class, basically. And this is where it's such an interesting inflection point within how class is changing in Britain, and we're still even things like Oasis and bands like that are coming with these very working class voices, comparable to the Beatles, in the early 60s, who've had these working class voices which must have sounded incredible to listeners, irreverent, but are unable still to fight the system and the establishment. But by 91 we are starting to see this establishment, but however, 96, 80% of people still think there's a class struggle in the UK. Has that class struggle got better or worse?
I suppose when they were taking the surveys in the 60s, this was at the start of the emergence of like the popular satire comedy, the emergence of Coronation Street. So even though they were kind of emerging, there was still very much a sense of, this is your lot in life. This is where you are. Don't try and move up, don't try and move down. This is just the way life is. And then these kind of, with TV becoming ever more popular and these northern voices being heard, this satire coming out in the form of, satirical comedy, then it, and also, Till Death Us Do Part, which kind of satirised the class system as well, and the old guard of Alf Garnett saying, this is our lot in life, you young whippersnappers, with all these aspirations and stuff, know your place. And then I suppose that's when people started to think about actually, there is a lot of disparity here, and why do we have to stay in our lane? Why can't we have a little bit more equal distribution of wealth, pay into the tax system and it gets distributed more evenly and stuff? I'm not talking about overt socialism or anything, but there's just people going, hang on, why does this old establishment have to be this way? Then you get to the 90s, because it hasn't happened, you get John Major saying we need a classless society, and these surveys saying the majority of people in Britain think it's unequal and it's shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and of course the unions, which have been a means of uniting the working classes, have lost all their power by the 90s as well, which is another factor why people think there's a class struggle, because they've got no way they can protest or strike en masse anymore, like they did back in the 70s and up to the mid 80s.
Yeah.
So
I wonder how, his announcement, John Major's announcement of a classless society, I wonder how that went down, because obviously nothing really much changed. And, is it just a general sense of another politician coming out with a gimmick, with a tagline, just to, basically say, I'm down with the kids, trust in me, I will, make this society classless and stuff. Whereas probably a lot of people just thought, no, because you're coming out of the 80s of that high unemployment, you've got the poll tax riots and stuff. You've got Margaret Thatcher endorsing John Major, who was seen as the wicked witch of the poor classes and for the poor class and stuff. So, yeah, it's probably just empty words from another politician.
Empty words. And remember, the Tories have been in power since 1979 at this point. So history looks back on John Major as somebody who genuinely tried to do good. He was genuinely trying to change the system, but was unable to tackle the system and its inequalities. So
he'd taken on a poison chalice.
Poison chalice, really, very much. So it's super interesting from a class point of view. This show is a real kind of proper snapshot of a time when they still held, and a lot of this, watching this episode, it felt like this could have been a sitcom from at any point from the previous 40 years, from any point from the 50s up until this was shown, because it still had those, it was still riffing on the same themes and the same ideas. And at some points it felt like an old school bedroom farce, like the whoops, there go my bloomers.
Yes.
Oh no, the vicar's at the door.
Yeah.
It felt very middle class in terms of the humour it's giving, which again pokes fun at the expense of, and yes, it pokes fun at Hyacinth, but at the same time it's not representing its working class characters in any kind of sympathetic light at all.
No. And I'm wondering why it looks so dated. And I'm guessing that one of the reasons why is because you don't get those type of comedies anymore. In the way it's filmed. It's studio based, it's multi-camera, so you can shoot it really quickly and stuff. A situation comedy, think Terry and June, The Good Life, Keeping Up Appearances, Only Fools and Horses to a certain extent, although Only Fools and Horses I would argue, because it was done by a working class writer. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how much Roy Clark was a working class writer, but it always felt as though it was updating itself, Only Fools and Horses, whereas this felt very stuck in its format.
Yes.
And it was very farcical. I mean, there was one scene in this where with the vicar, very farcical. It's set in a vestibule of a church hall with lots of doors, people coming in and out of doors, lots of slapstick humour and everything like that. I mean, it was charming, it was good, and I will maintain that Patricia Routledge is just mesmerising. She elevates it to a higher extent. With a lesser qualified actress in the main role, this would have fallen by the wayside a long time ago, because it's quite formulaic.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, that was good. So anyway, what I thought I would do is just have a little deep dive, do a little trivia section into the actors in Keeping Up Appearances, because I think a lot of our gazers growing up in the 90s will have experienced Keeping Up Appearances, because let's face it, there wasn't a huge amount else on telly at this point, was there? Not a lot of people had Sky at this point.
Well, Sky doesn't really exist at this point.
Yeah, so there was still essentially just 4 channels.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's have a look. Let's have a look at Patricia Routledge in particular, okay? So Patricia Routledge, she made her professional stage debut at the Liverpool Playhouse in 1952 and her West End debut in 1959. She made her Broadway debut in 1966 and won the 1968 Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical for her role in Darling of the Day.
Wow.
She's a Tony Award winner. You know, she won the 1988 Olivier Award for Best Actress in a Musical for Candide at the Old Vic. And she also appeared in To Sir With Love in 1967. So then, you know, so she's this like hugely well-respected, award-winning actor. You know, and then she came to prominence in the 80s with her television monologues written by Alan Bennett and Victoria Wood, appearing in Bennett's A Woman of No Importance in 1982, and as Kitty in Victoria Wood, as seen on TV, and was nominated for BAFTA TV Award for Best Actress for Bennett's Talking Heads, A Lady of Letters. And then after keeping up appearances, she starred in the television series Hetty Wainthropp Investigates, and she was made a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, a DBE, for her services to theatre and charity in 2017. So what a life.
What a life.
Yes.
Honestly, amazing career.
Yeah, intensely private in her private life,
Right.
etc. And then left keeping up appearances because I think she was just a little bit fed up of it and wanted to explore new avenues and stuff. Because it kind of did become tired towards the end. It was like, oh, there's another series of keeping up appearances. You know, but I mean, you watch her on Victoria Wood. I mean, that's just a master of her craft, isn't she? A mistress of her craft.
She died recently, didn't she?
Yes, it was only last year, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
2025, 3rd of October, dying peacefully in her sleep.
Oh, I mean, she's just great.
Yeah.
You know, she does, as you said earlier, elevate this material.
Yeah.
It's all about her, really.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one of the criticisms levelled at the show is that the kind of relationship between her and Richard is this really traditional henpecked husband trope, which it is to some extent, but between her and Clive Swift, who plays Richard, they kind of make it something different.
They do, and I think it's because he deadpans a lot of it.
Yes,
you know,
yes, he does.
He balances out her elevated performance by being really subtle with his.
Yes,
you know,
yeah,
and what I found watching this episode and stuff is that she's got a huge amount of love for Richard. Their relationship in itself is never questioned. He puts up with her extremely well, while all the other characters are kind of, you know, especially the next door neighbours, are reacting to Hyacinth. He's very calm, steady, and doesn't really react to her that much. So that's really nice to see, actually. Yeah. So let's have a talk about a few of the other characters. So Richard, the henpecked husband, Clive Swift. His son is Joe Swift, who some of our gazers, I know Jeannie Nunu will know this because she's an avid gardener. He presents Gardener's World,
right,
and the Chelsea Flower Show,
right,
yes,
right.
And actually, when you see a picture of him, you'll think, yes,
of course it is,
direct descendant of Clive Smith. Clive Swift was Cambridge educated, degree in English literature. He appeared in both classic and modern Doctor Who. Now, you've got a little story about Clive Swift,
God, yes,
you?
he does, because he's interviewed. He's in the Kylie Minogue Christmas special, Voyage of the Damned, from 2007, and there's an interview with Doctor Who magazine, and it goes horrible. He just becomes really horrible in it, and the interviewer says, I wasn't sure at this point if he was actually joking or not, because it's just a stupid show, isn't it? It's just television. There's nothing to get excited about, and walks off. And the interviewer was like, I genuinely don't know if he was joking. I don't think he was. But by all accounts, a very nice man in other ways.
Yeah.
You know, he's in a lot of late 60s, early 70s TV stuff. It's kind of it's kind of creepy sci-fi shows and creepy dramas and things. You see him pop up in lots of different things, playing all kinds of characters. Very versatile actor, really.
Yeah. Great actor. He was once married to Dame Margaret Drabble, renowned biographer and novelist.
Right.
Yes. So there you go. Another fact, fans.
Yes.
Another trivia fact. Okay, let's move on. So, Hyacinth and Richard live next door to Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth is... She's very... She obviously she's got a great deal of affection for Hyacinth, but spends the most of her time trying to avoid her. And when she gets invited around for tea and coffee, she is really nervous around the Royal Doulton, isn't she?
Which is what I'm like when you give me a cup of tea and say, don't spill it. And of course, immediately your hand starts to wobble. And then you're like, oh God, don't spill it, which is exactly the same dynamic we have. So I can completely empathise with Elizabeth at this point, having to deal with old Hyacinth in the corner.
Yes.
Dave Bucket over there.
Well, Hyacinth resorts to giving her a beaker for a tea, and then I resort to giving you champagne and an anti-spillage coupe. Yes, do you think I'm a little bit like Hyacinth?
You are when I get a cup of tea in my hand. There's a new rug on the house. Yes.
So anyway, the nervous Elizabeth is played by Josephine Tewson. Now, she studied at RADA, once married to Leonard Rossiter. And, strange fact, Tewson was rumoured to be John Inman's cousin, though she denied this in several interviews.
Random.
Really random. No, he's not my cousin. Who said that?
So random.
Nothing to see here.
Wow.
I wonder if there was some family intrigue going on there. Mm-hmm. And then Tewson passed away at Denville Hall. Now, Denville Hall is a really kind of, strange, not strange place, but unique place.
Yes.
Because it's a retirement home in London for actors and other entertainment professionals. It's a historic building in Northwood, which is a borough in the borough of Hillingdon in London. And it's used as a retirement home for professional actors, actresses, and members of other theatrical professions. Richard Attenborough, Joan Plowright. Oh my God, I can't speak.
Plowright.
Richard Attenborough, Joan Plowright, Carmen Silvera, Edith in Lower Low, Billy Whitelaw, and just a few of the hundreds of residents of this retirement home.
Well, when my good friend Jacqueline Pierce was getting towards the end of her life, we discussed moving her to Denville Hall, but they wouldn't allow pets. So she refused to be parted from her dogs.
Right.
So didn't go. And Lalla Ward, who was the next Doctor Who girl, who's married to Tom Baker, does a lot of charity work for Denville Hall.
Right.
Yes. So it's still very much a thing.
Yeah. And apparently there's a lot of charity fundraising that goes on for this home. And they sold the original stage set, auctioned it off, of The Mousetrap that had been in London for 44 years to raise money for this home. So that's really interesting. Now, Elizabeth, I won't go on hugely, but Elizabeth has got a brother called Emmett who lived with his sister. I mean, obviously it was quite ambiguous as to his proclivities, the which way he swung and everything, but he was quite hot, wasn't he?
He wasn't hot, but my 17-year-old self fancied him in some
it's really weird. Wasn't it? Yeah, I suppose that's the way to describe it. Not hot, but strangely fanciful.
Yes.
And he was played by David Griffin. He was played by David Griffin. I've lost the ability to talk. I don't know what's wrong with me. Now, do you remember Heidi High?
Yes.
He was squadron leader Clive Dempster.
Of course he was.
I think that's maybe why I fancied him, because he was quite suave in that.
Yes, he was.
And it was a few years before.
Yeah.
Random fact, he toured worldwide with Sue Pollard in the stage show The Good Sex Guide.
I mean, that's a hot ticket if ever I heard one.
It's totally random. He was in Trog, the last film.
My God.
The last film of Joan Crawford.
Yes, Trog is something special, let me tell you. If you've never seen Trog, it's worth hunting down because it is just quite astonishing.
This was at a point when Joan Crawford, this was 7 years before her death, it was her last film role, and she was, barrel scraping at this point, which is really sad to see. But
she's become a bit of a scream queen at this point, Joan. And actually, I really love the latter films of her career, because they're all shitty horror films, but they're fucking great because Joan is in them.
Yeah.
But Trog at one point, it's basically a man in like a suit. Trog is this creature they find. He's like a caveman.
Troglodyte.
He's basically Captain Caveman.
Right.
And there's one scene of it going, "What is it, Trog? Can you help me?" It's really good. It's really worth the hunt out if you've not seen it. Take a drink or whatever drugs need to watch it, though.
Oh, and then another fact about David Griffin, he was in The Sea Devils, which is a classic Doctor Who story from 1972. Now, even if you're not a Doctor Who fan, I'm sure you've seen that infamous image of the sea monsters emerging from the sea.
Yeah. That wasn't him. He was in the submarine fighting them. Yes, I remember him. Yeah.
Now, let's move on to Onslow, Daisy and Rose, which is the working class. Daisy's the sister of Hyacinth, and you know, in frequently in the series, they were always rocking up, weren't they, to Hyacinth's horror and Hyacinth was always trying to kind of get rid of them because he didn't want to be associated with her lower class family. So Geoffrey Hughes played Onslow. He provided the voice of Paul McCartney in the animated film Yellow Submarine.
Wow.
How random is that?
Random.
Okay, but he's more familiarly known as playing Bin Man Eddie Yates in Coronation Street, Twiggy from the Royal Family, and he played Vernon. He was a con man and rogue businessman in Heartbeat. And another random fact, in 2009, he was appointed Deputy Lieutenant of the Isle of Wight.
Wow, gosh.
Very strange, that. Then Judy Cornwell, who played Daisy. She has written an autobiography about her childhood experiences called Adventures of a Jelly Baby.
Right.
Random. And that she used to be a professional dancer and comedian in her teens, working her act between the nudes at the Irving Theatre Club on Irving Street off Leicester Square, London.
Wow.
Which is where a lot of people kind of started their acts, wasn't it? You know, in between all the nudie bits in these theatres. Who else were we talking about who did that?
Those reviews, like Kenneth Williams, Sheila Hancock, they were big business back in the 50s and the 60s, you know. But it's the whole kind of tied up with the idea of variety entertainment, variety night out. So that was a real training ground for a lot of performers in those days.
Yeah. And then finally, Mary Miller, who played Rose. Now, Rose was kind of portrayed as the nymphomaniac sister, wasn't she, as well, who lived with Daisy. Mary Miller replaced Shirley Stelfox, who played the part of Rose in the series 1, because Stelfox had prior commitments to the series Making Out. Do you remember Making Out? Yeah, Margie Clark.
Yes.
It's about the factory workers in in Liverpool.
Yep.
That was a great series. It was on a couple of years ago, and so I Sky Plused it and watched all of them.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, but Mary Miller is a really prolific theatre actress, and she originated the part of Madame Giry in Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera. And also, in 1960, she was Julie Andrews' understudy for Queen Guinevere in Camelot at the Majestic Theatre in Manhattan.
Wow, gosh.
So, you know, we see her as this common working class tart, by all accounts. But this actor had a really prolific career.
Wow, gosh. It's
Anyway.
Amazing.
Anyway, that was just a few little snippets, little trivia facts about the cast of Keeping Up Appearances.
Good, thank you for that. Because and if you think back to the show, it does feel like a very middle class show, doesn't it? Even though it's got these working class characters which it punches down on, and there's even to the extent that we've got this whole thing that revolves around a vicar. We get the vicar's wife. It's very traditional in its gender roles, isn't it? The vicar's wife has an apron on, even. She's very much the trad housewife. It ends in this bedroom farce, as we said. So the humour in it is based on embarrassment and social discomfort more than anything else. Is it dated?
Yes.
Yes. Are the jokes dated?
Yes.
Yes. But, you know, it's elevated by Patricia Routledge.
Yes.
You know, so it clearly has got these problematic elements. They're not particularly problematic. It's not like it's never racist. It's never like it's a little bit gendered. Yes, it's a comedy of manners, which looks a bit dated and which could have been taken from any point in the previous 50 years. But at the worst, it's a bit harmless, isn't it? You know?
I'd say so. Yeah.
And I suppose the strongest argument about the show is that the butt of the joke is always Hyacinth. It's Hyacinth's struggles, which are the ones which make us laugh. We're expected not to align ourselves with Hyacinth, but to laugh at her, not with her, because she is rather pathetic, isn't there? The way she's constantly trying to... I mean, there's a scene in this episode where she's on the street telling people that Richard's on the phone to the Chinese ambassador, complete strangers, you know, and it's just like, oh, Hyacinth. She's insufferable at some points, you know. She doesn't listen to Richard. Richard's got real concerns about his early retirement, more the fact that he's horrified, but thought he's going to spend more time with Hyacinth. But she just like steamrollers over everything. I did wonder why they were together. I can't lie.
Well, it's the common sitcom trope, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's these two characters who can't live with each other and can't live without each other.
George and
It's
Mildred,
Patsy
Steptoe and Son.
Patsy and Adina.
Yeah. So, yes, not particularly a problematic show, I don't think.
No.
And where it stands today, it punches up and down at class at the same time. It shows aspirations of being the kind of foolish game that it really is, both tragic and ridiculous. Hyacinth is the villain and the victim at the same time. And unlike a lot of 90s comedies, it's pretty safe. It's not reliant on edgy or offensive humour at all. You could show this to your nan, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So, yeah, not bad. Have you got any other points about it?
No, I haven't. I think, what I will say is that where it's entered into the modern day vernacular is if you're a driver and you've got somebody sat next to you who's basically being the backseat driver, invariably there'll be a lot of people all over the country, all over the world going, all right, Hyacinth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because she was always telling her husband how to drive, and he just took it on the chin all the time.
Yeah. So Hyacinth, as you say, she's become like a shorthand, isn't it? She was a certain type of person that we know exactly what they're like if you say there's a proper Hyacinth bouquet over there, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose sometimes if you kind of go round to someone's house for dinner and they're being overly polite and a little bit posh, like the telephone voices that our nanas used to put on and everything.
Yeah.
You can see them, everything needs to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, they're a little bit of a Hyacinth, aren't they?
Yeah.
Whereas if you come to my house, just get food slopped on your plate, go, there you go.
Unless you're me and you have to be careful when you're given a cup of tea over a new rug.
Oh, well, yeah, that's just you there, darling.
I knew it.
Oh, yes, there was the incident, wasn't there? With the salsa.
That's because you scared the shit out of me so much I ended up spinning in. It ended up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's not get into this. We're going to fall out. Anyway.
Still there. Can still see a bit of red in the rug.
Final question for the listeners. Does keeping up appearances mock class anxiety or quietly reinforce them?
Oh,
Or does it do
interesting.
both?
Interesting.
So with all that being said, what would you give this?
I think I would give this, just for the central performance alone, that has to bump it up a couple of notches. So I think I would give it 7 candlelight suppers out of 10.
Yeah. I'd say, the performances are uniformly excellent, but it just feels a little dated, a little stale, and just very middle class. So for that reason, I'm going to give it 6 Rose's miniskirts out of 10. Yeah. That was good.
That was really good, actually. And
Yes.
thank you for imparting all your knowledge on the class system and the history of it. It was really, really interesting.
I'm drained now. I need to go and plug myself back into the database.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, David.
Right.
Let's get sexy.
Oh.
Because next week it's
Steady
gonna get hot at the problematic case because we've got the beginning of our mini season looking at sex.
Is that supposed to be a sexy voice? It just sounded a little bit as though you'd smoked 20 fags.
Do my AMSR voice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're getting sexy. We've got 4 weeks of sex coming up on the problematic case. So strap in, everybody, because it's going to get filthy.
I'll strap on.
Really, yes. Yeah. What we're looking at next week, Dave?
Okay, so we're going to do a 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, aren't
Yes,
we?
yeah.
So we're going to start in the 60s next week with the Michael Caine kind of star-making role.
Yes.
The Michael Caine star-making role of Alfie. Now,
What's it all about?
What's it all about? What's it going to say about males' attitudes to women, to the sex in the 60s? Well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
We will, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes.
In the meantime, if you like us, follow us, subscribe our socials at Podcast Gaze on Instagram and TikTok. Get onto the YouTube channel, Podcast Gaze, or just a Gaze channel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gaze channel. And email us at
theproblematicgaze@gmail.com. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and do leave us a review. 5-star only, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. We love you for it, because we love you anyway. Right, I'm off to try and seduce the hot vicar in a cupboard. What are you going to do?
Well, you know what? I think I might just go back to bed, stick telly on, smoke 20 B&H
Oh,
in bed.
lovely.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Like the old days.
I might join you.
Oh, all right then. You're going to bring the vicar?
I'll bring the vicar.
All right
Actually,
then.
no, he's mine. So until next time, au reservoir.
Au reservoir.